Hi everybody, Alan Denman here. Welcome to Storyteller, bringing you thoughts and ideas and insights into the art of storytelling in various forms, whether it be a screenplay, a short story or a novel. They are all narrative forms, and I am passionate about story. I'm very focused and concerned with the stories that we're telling ourselves. When you read a news article about a war somewhere, that is a form of story, and what impact does that have upon us? So I consider it very important what stories we're telling, whether they are historical and real life or whether they're fictional. It's very important because we're putting those ideas and images into our subconscious, and that helps to form the way we see the world and the way we see ourselves as human beings. So what stories are we telling? So the theme of this week's broadcast is how relatable is your protagonist? And I've been talking about this and saying the way that stories work successfully is you imagine there's a proscenium arch and you're in your chair or you're in a cinema seat, and there comes a moment when you cross over like a threshold, an invisible threshold, and you enter that fictional world, that imaginary world, whether it's a visual world, a film, something on television, or whether it's a word-generated world, which would be a novel, of course, or a short story. And, the question is, can you get people into the story? And that's the first point. And this, as I've described, is the biggest secret of storytelling, is how to get people into that imaginary world. One of the ways you do this, probably the primary way I would say, is getting us to emotionally engage with the protagonist in some way. So if you're looking at your own story, or you're looking at a story that somebody else has written, whether it be a film or a novel, you can ask yourself, how engaging is the protagonist? How relatable is that protagonist? And relatable and engaging, not quite the same thing, but we did talk a little bit about that in previous episodes, and that is, we can generate a sympathy for them, especially the younger they are. The age of your protagonist is extremely important. If you have a protagonist who's 28, consider making them 21 and see how that changes the story. Do we feel more sympathy with a younger person than we do with an older? I would say generally, yes, we do. And then if you go into childhood and a child protagonist, we definitely, that wins automatic sympathy and support in some way. So sympathy is a very common way of in storytelling to get us to engage with a protagonist in some way. So you might begin with your story with somebody hanging off the edge of a cliff, or in a runaway train, or they're lost somewhere and they're in danger and they're in a terrible storm, or something like that, or maybe in a war, and they're very, very vulnerable. So that will give us generate a lot of sympathy for that character. So look at the way your story is going to start. You want to generate some emotion in the reader or the viewer, and get us across that threshold into the fictional world. So just bring you up to speed then. So I've been watching a TV series on Netflix called Eric. I bet many of you have been watching that too, with Benedict Cumberbatch playing the main lead, a marvellous actor. But I am having a problem with it. My wife doesn't feel exactly the same, but he's a pretty unlikable character, and he is the protagonist. So if some of the scenes were not so well written, some of the other characters not so sympathetic, I wouldn't still be watching it, because I think he's an egotistical, he's narcissistic, he's very neurotic. You know, he has a very inflated idea of himself, and he's quite bitter and angry as well. And you add all that lot together, and really a pretty unlikable protagonist. And the danger there is that, you know, you as myself as a viewer, I've got kind of one foot in that world, but I'm also thinking, oh, maybe I'll go and read a novel or something, you know, and do something else, you know, look at another story. So I love reading stories. I love that experience of being transported across a threshold into that imaginary world. So I think for anybody wanting to write a novel or a story or a screenplay, whatever form it is, you know, think about how you begin and what is the environment, what is the situation that your protagonist is in. Is there bombs flying, are things falling apart, is lost, whatever, but generate some emotion in your audience, in your readers, that will, and that emotion, this is the way the psychology works, and I will talk about this more, and that is that when emotion is generated, that stimulates the subconscious, which is the right brain here on this side, if you're right-handed. No, I think it's the other side, actually, isn't it? Anyway, but it doesn't matter about that. The important thing is the emotion releases us to enter our the imaginative world, and to free ourselves from the ordinary restrictions of time and space wherever we are. I hope that makes sense. So that's something to think about. That's some advice for all you writers out there. And just the other thing I want to say, and I will say a lot more about this as well, is that my website, alandenman.com, I'd love you to come and visit it and have a look at it. It is now open. I call it my emporium, and there's something for everybody in there. So imagine it's like a bazaar, a big shop with lots of different areas and rooms in it and so forth. So I've got extracts of my novels, and you can download a third of my novels for free. There are articles, short stories, poems, what I call story bites, which are little short insights or comments on storytelling as well. All of that's available, and you can spend as much time as you want in there having a look and enjoying yourself. So I'd love you to come and have a look at my emporium, alandenman.com. And now that's it for this week, and I think I've said enough. I hope that's useful. I hope that's stimulated your imaginations in some way if you're a writer, and if not, think about applying the principle of engagement and relatability to whatever you're viewing or reading. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you very much.